Hello then, welcome to The Nation. I'm Jessy Chahal. This is a special edition where we take a look at the new cabinet lineup, or as some quarters are calling it, a reshuffle. The cabinet members will be sworn in this coming Monday. Here's a quick disclaimer. The views and opinions shared on this program are solely the views and opinions of our guest speakers and do not in any form or way reflect the views of Bernama. I'd like to bring in all my guests today who I'll be speaking to, experts from the political arena as well as the crisis communications arena, crisis management. Gentlemen, welcome. Thanks for being with me on this edition of The Nation. Of course, many of you coming in on last minute's notice, so appreciate that as well. Now, of course, we've just heard the newly Prime Minister has just unveiled a smaller cabinet than his predecessor, Muhyiddin Yassin. That too, this time minus a Deputy Prime Minister. How do you all view these newly appointed officers? I'd like to start with NORDIN.
Well, Jessy, it's great to be here today. It's, of course, a very historic day, and it's wonderful that our show is on Friday because all these major announcements tend to come on a Friday. But I think it's an interesting day. I think it's an interesting lineup that we've seen, and I think as we see all our other guests joining us today, I think we're going to have an excellent conversation, and I think it's great to be part of the show.
That's right. So let's get that ball rolling. Back to my question earlier. How do you each individually view these newly appointed officers at this point? Who would like to go first, Datuk?
I do not know whether it's a reduced number of cabinet ministers. I've probably not done so much of arithmetic, but the count that I saw is 70. They're about from the previous.
If I'm not mistaken, I could jump in here. The previous cabinet had a team of 70 ministers and deputy ministers. This new lineup has 31 cabinet ministers and 38 deputy ministers. So from 70 down to 69, Datuk.
Plus one prime minister, so 70. So it's about the same. So that's number one. And number two, do we see strikingly different? I think the only headline that can be made out of this cabinet is the appointment of the health minister, KJ. I think Khairy Jamaluddin has done a wonderful job in accelerating the vaccination. We all know now vaccination proven by data and science is the only way to reduce significantly the mortality and severity in terms of COVID-19 patients. So I think that's the only headlines that I can see with my new spec. But I do not. I can't see some. There are some other changes, reshuffling, as you said earlier. But by and large, the headline seems to be KJ being the health minister, and I very welcome that appointment.
Right. It also seems that not much really has changed. We see some swapping of portfolios. Dr. O, how do you view this new lineup?
Well, frankly speaking, it's not a surprising lineup. In fact, it's a very underwhelming lineup because essentially we are substantially the same group of politicians who hold all these portfolios. Sometimes they swap the ministerial portfolios, such as between KJ, Khairy Jamaluddin, and Adam Baba, and so on. And I think in addition to the KJ headline, I think a lot of people are also hoping very earnestly that KJ will still hold on to helming the vaccination drive and not relegating it to somebody else, to put it very politely. I think there are also the absence of various figures whom people would like to have in the cabinet. For example, Azalina Othman. For example, I think Johali of Titi Wangsa can be appointed as senator, even not and all these, I think, they are not going to the cabinet. I think would have disappointed a lot of people. And also Mat Hassan, deputy of UMNO.
All right, Prof. and Pete and Doctor, please weigh in as well. Please tell us very quickly what, or rather, how you feel about this new lineup, Prof.
Okay, thank you, Jessy. I think first, for me personally, I think it is a very disappointing cabinet. Why? Because I think Ismail Sabri have the opportunity to really work on a different levels and a different approach in cabinet, looking at the framework of what is happening in the past couple of months. And with that, I was expecting some extent new faces to bring in, especially from the professional and the technocrat. Looking from the politics point of view, I think it is very much what is doing with the cabinet appointment to very much please and to kind of maintain the status quo in terms of the political cooperation within the coalition party. With that, I think looking for the current response in the social media, you can see people are very disappointed with that. Why? Because I think, as I said just now, you have the opportunity to make the difference, and he failed to do that. I think that's basically what the people feel just now.
That's right. I want to talk about what Bridget Welsh had tweeted. She said it's a missed opportunity to build a legitimate, of course, lineup and to strengthen Malaysia, as the cabinet essentially is only predominantly the same with only a few swaps. Prof. Azmi, how do you feel about the lineup?
Well, Jesse, thank you for the early caveat that you put up just now. It makes our job easier, I guess, to say what we felt, I guess. I agree with Dr. Hamidin that an opportunity is lost. It's true that, but again, reality bites. Because Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri has a very slim majority. So he needs somehow rather put out a thank you note to those who supported him. Even though Datuk Sri Anwar said, he will give an easy passage if the vote of confidence prop up in parliament. But again, you just cannot trust anybody else in the politics. But again, I want to stress that let's give the current cabinet a chance. It is a disappointment, an opportunity lost. But again, as I can say, I'm not a politician. I'm out of the circle of opposition. I can say that. But Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri, he needs to satisfy all quarters in his particular organization or in this particular government, Jesse.
Right, Prof. Thanks for that. Pete, it's on you.
Yeah. From our side, we actually see this in terms of crisis. It's quite a positive cabinet. I mean, it's a cabinet to run government, but it's also a cabinet in terms of a major crisis that's ongoing and will be with us for some time. So experience and expertise, you're looking for credibility. And what we've got with Khairi Jamaluddin, with Tunku Zafrul particularly remaining in the finance post, is that we're seeing those boxes being properly ticked. So it should actually give some confidence if you take the political aspect out of it. In terms of purely running the crisis, it should give some confidence in the fact that where we are, where we need to get to with that experience in that particular team. And also, we talked very earlier there about Dada was talking about KJ being now becoming the health minister, and that's a very positive thing and a kind of a promotion for him. But the danger, as also was mentioned, is that we do not lose focus now on the rollout of the vaccination, where he's done a tremendous job after a fairly slow start and getting us to where we are just now. I think also the other thing with the crisis is the fact that there's timelines in there. We've got 100 days for review of ministry performances based on deliverables that are being set, and good thing as well.
A bit of a.
So if I can jump in very quickly.
Please do that, please.
In terms of the PIC and the vaccination program that was placed under Mostly in the previous cabinet, I think that was done for an obvious reason. They needed someone who can actually manage it and deliver it, and that's why it was presented under given the responsibility to KJ. I'm very sure. I'm very confident that that will be retained under the health minister now, being KJ there. I think we cannot compromise on our vaccination program that has gone very good, that has remarkably reduced severity and mortality. Obviously, the mortality that we are seeing now is as a result of earlier infections. But going forward, endemic we all have to live with it. 80-90% of the new infection cases will be stage 1 and stage 2, not the stage 4 and 5. So I think, again, I don't want to sound like I'm a PR agency for KJ, but I think here's the headline for this particular cabinet. As far as the finance minister is concerned, I really hope this time around there will be more empathy shown by him for the many. I think the last time he has a serious perception about being banker friendly than people friendly. I think we need to readjust the economy during unprecedented times. We need to address the unprecedented time challenges with unprecedented times solution. You cannot bank on Adam Smith and Keynesian and monetary economies forever. We cannot depend on rating agencies forever.
So,
We
so,
need
so
to be
this brings me to this point. With the lineup predominantly the same, do you foresee any departure from old strategies in terms of how the country will tackle the turbulent economy, the pandemic? And if so, if you do see that, then in which areas per se? And this is an open question. Please, anyone weigh in.
Jessy, let me jump in. Can I?
Sure.
Hamidin, can I do first?
Yes, Dr. Azmi, please.
Okay. Since we're talking about KJ Minister for our health, if Datuk said he don't want to sound to be like a PR for KJ, okay, let me be his PR, I guess. I think what I want to see KJ, his KPI is two things. Indonesia announced today that for whoever who want the third booster dose, have to pay for it. I think we haven't talked about the third booster dose as yet. So I'm hoping that Khairy Jamaluddin as the minister would put out a solution to this particular third dose, I think, booster dose that we are needed right now. And another thing is that what about from the 12 to 17 years old, whether a decision hasn't been made yet. I think we need a brave decision to give vaccination to this particular vulnerable group, which is from 12 to 17 years old. So I think to answer your question, Jessy, I think there'll be a continuation, but we are hoping that the continuation is for the better. Ministers are brave enough to put out a policy that are out of this world, I guess. Somebody will criticize it, but again, I think we need some brave ministers to put out a brave policy, Jessy.
I think.
Thanks, Prof. Dr. O, you don't have much time with this. I know you have to leave. Please share your thoughts.
I think another missed opportunity, to be more specific about, let's say, what Bridget talked about, it's in the MITI ministry, the International Trade and Industry Ministry. To revive the economy is not just government pumping money into the economy. It's also about how to revive investors' confidence, both domestic and foreign. And again, over the last 1.5 years, Azmin Ali's performance have not exactly been very stellar in this regard. So it would have been much better to have somebody else helming this particularly important ministry for our economy at the moment. You could always give Azmin something else, which are also very important, but perhaps not at the moment, right? So I think a lot of people will worry, and from small and medium enterprises as well as the larger manufacturers, whether those haphazard series of I wouldn't even call them policies, more like pronouncements and so on, would still go on as such. Yeah.
If I can add to that, Doctor, one of the things that I'm seeing here is this kind of analogy that we need a team that's all playing the same game and all moving in the same direction. And while we don't have as many superstars as we'd like, maybe we've got one or two. Of course, Khairy has really been highlighted today and has delivered. And this is what people want. And I think going into the next election as well, people want ministers who deliver. And I think that's one thing that this current cabinet has to realize, that their crisis is now, and their crisis is 18 to 20 months away if they don't deliver now. And I think that's one of the things. So what I want to ask people is, are we seeing a team, while maybe not a lot of superstars, but are they going to move in the same direction? Are they going to play as a team?
No, Nordin, I like that analogy that you play. They play as a team, but I just want to bring it to a different level. I think people expect with a new new political development, new cabinet, people do expect things will move differently to some extent from the previous government. So how can we have a very different result? I just want to add on from your point as a team. How can we expect a different result when we do look with the same faces in the cabinet? I think that is why I said the missed opportunity. Imagine from the 69 people newly appointed, only two people out, Atakiri and Dr. Zul, and 3 people in. Even the 3 people in is Shahidan, Norma, is not very much known as a innovative in term of that. So with that, this is where I said missed opportunity and challenge for Ismail Sabri to build. I think what happened in the government of Tan Sri Muhyiddin is huge deficit of trust among the people. So with that, I was expecting why new faces will be put at least to bring a new start for the government. With this, I think it's going to be very tough for Ismail Sabri government to build a new momentum, building trust, because as you said just now, only 1 or 2 new star that is there that have to carry all the burdens. Look at a couple of things. Yes, we're talking about vaccination, very successful, but we do have problem with the economic, as you said just now, as Dr. Wisan mentioned. Um, Azmin was not really much kind of stellar in his performance in the first government of Muhyiddin Yassin, but nobody in new in terms of economy, in terms of social. We still have Ina Harun, helming the woman, and at the same time, many others in terms of education, for example, which is big issues. And this is where I think what Ismail Sabri managed to achieve at this particular moment is very much the political gain rather than the people gain. So this is the biggest challenge for him, to really bring back the people trust to the government. I think this is the crisis that he really have to take care, in my point of view. If not, I think he will land into a big problem very soon.
So do any one of you disagree with that?
I think if I may add a little bit, let's take the Liverpool Football Club analogy. When
Thank you
Brendan
for
Rodgers,
choosing Liverpool, Dato'.
yeah, it's the best club in the world. When
Exactly.
Liverpool, under Brendan Rodgers, they were almost there, but they didn't make it. With the same set of players, Klopp came after 1 season, they made it. Now, what I'm trying to say is that sometimes the team needs direction. The teams need cohesive plan. The team needs consistent in policy. I agree. Let's take an example of cabotage policy. We've lost 3 cable landing in Malaysia because of our cabotage policy that was inconsistent. And that's why EMIR Research have put forward a 34-pager proposal to the previous government just before the Majlis Raja Raja, not this one, the previous one, and trying to convince them to jump on this. The main 4 things are protecting lives and livelihood, education emergency response, national reconciliation, and national economic recovery plan. These are the 4 elements that they need to look at. So now Ismail Sabri is talking about 100 days will be given. That's about a little bit more than 3 months for each of the ministers to perform and deliver. Now let's make a specific KPI, daily, weekly, monthly, and then be transparent about it. So I think if this were done, and again, EMIR Research in the midst of preparing a 100-day plan with all those 4 elements included with specific KPIs, specific ministries to be able to perform, then they will have a hope. Now, why it is very critical, going back a little bit about this KJ thing, why it is important, this health ministry, because if we do not manage the pandemic well, we are going to be in this slumber for a long time to come. That our country being a trading nation with a very high FDI to GDP ratio, we cannot afford it. We cannot afford it. So that is why I think, yes, there's a lot of skepticism. There's a lot of sort of condemnation amongst the net citizen about the new cabinet. But with KJ being there, I'm hopeful that at least we will manage one element. And then the finance minister, this time around, I hope to have more empathy from him for the many. for the people.
Pete, we haven't heard from you. Please weigh in.
Yeah, no, I hear what everybody's saying, but I mean, what we've got to bear in mind here is that when you have a macro view on this and what's happening globally, very few governments have changed during this pandemic. Very shuffles during this period. They've tried to hold on to some level of stability and consistency, and what they've done is they've introduced certain expertise as is required. And Malaysia still has that capability outside of cabinet with the various committees that are there running the crisis, the National Recovery Council, etc. So there is still an opportunity for people to come in and to be able to help drive where that expertise is needed. So the stability is really, really important. And whilst we've got politics, we've got social, we've got economic, we've got crisis. So each of those boxes have to be looked at on their own. We cannot look at, we have to have big political change to make the crisis work. We can't. Crisis is a different thing from the political issues and from the social and from the economic issues that we have. They're very specific. So this is a crisis cabinet. This is a war cabinet. It's not a political cabinet.
Jessy?
Right, Pete. Yes, Prof. I just want to put this through though. So in conclusion, do any one of you feel that we have a cabinet strong enough to take us through this pandemic, to fight some of the battles economically? We spoke about, a few of the other important elements, judging by the ministers who have been put in some of these salient or important portfolios.
Yeah, Jessy, can I? So, who is it?
Whoever, just jump in.
Yeah, okay. No, I agree with Dr. HAMIDIN said that there are few members of parliament that has been elected, and also the old faces that we cannot rely on. That's very true. But again, to answer your question, Jessy, can the current cabinet, as Pete said, is a war cabinet? Can we go through this particular dire straits? I think it all depends on what DATUK said just now, the leadership. And I'm hoping that the current leadership, which is the Prime Minister, is totally different from the previous leadership. And I'm hoping that Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri is a hands-on leader, where he knows what's going on. He won't depend 100% entirely on his advisors to know what's going on the ground. And he demonstrated that when he visited Yan Kedah a few days ago. He wants to know what's going on. And I'm really hoping that when you have a very strong leadership, strong direction, clear direction, and I think the other members of cabinet will follow through. Let's hope that let's hope for the best for the nation, Jessy.
Right, Prof. Dr. O, I want to come to you because yeah.
I just want to add. I think this is where I want to bring up NORDIN point just now as a team. And also with Dr. Rai's point. This is where, in my point of view, in the last government, why people are not very happy what's happening, because people were kept in the dark to some extent about the direction of the country. This is where I agree with Dr. Rais and where I think the most important thing for Ismail Sabri, yes, you have the cabinet member, he is a recycled cabinet member, but the most important is for him to really to set the direction. And this is where he must be transparent, what needs to be achieved and what is the aim and how to achieve that. I think this is the most important thing after a week of the government, and he created a very good positive move when he called all the three opposition leaders and how, for example, to bring that framework into the direction that he wants to bring the country into. So this is where, in my point of view, as a leader, three things that he plays: give a security to the people, give a direction, and organizing it. So clearly all about the organization, but he must create the organizing, how to organize, how things are going to be achieved. I think this is the most important part for him.
Dr. O?
Yeah, let me touch on a bit on the political side, and then I will have to leave. Sorry. I think politically, since he's appointing substantially the same group of people, by one count, about 90% of the ministers in the old cabinets and so on. Hopefully, that would not upset or would not ruffle too many feathers, and therefore his administration would be a more stable one than the previous administration, because I think the opposition is actually the least of his worry, because it doesn't look like the opposition is very united. And as we saw before the latest round of prime ministerial appointment, the opposition could not put up a big fight in order to grab this premiership. So his main political challenge would still remain, number one, how would he now accommodate Bersatu, which is relegated to be like playing second fiddle in the ruling coalition? How would he still keep them happy, for example, right? Instead of previously UMNO rocking the Bersatu-led boat, and now Bersatu sort of rocking the UMNO-led boat. He would not like that to happen. And number two, within his own UMNO party, you will have to make sure the various factions are okay, at least with him. That's why you see some of his the various UMNO regional leaders, Noor Omar and so on, are appointed into the cabinet. So I think my only hope would be this very, shall we say, much more stable government could then hopefully transform into an able government. Somebody taught me this phrase, from stable to able, right? So hopefully that would happen in the coming months. Sorry, I will have to leave early. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oisan, for weighing in there. I got to take a cup of water.
Maybe, Jessy, while you're having a drink,
yes,
I want to kind of
resonate with the fact, the words from stable to able. I think this is something we do need. Now, again, this question opened to the panel. Please feel free to jump in. Is the issue about rebranding? Is it about creating a much more coordinated government at this point, gentlemen?
Jessy, if I may, it is absolutely that. And Dr. HAMIDIN really has nailed it. That one of the keys that we have been trying to promote through has been communication, and how you communicate during a crisis. Because without proper communication, timely communication, and easy communication for people to understand, every single stakeholder will not buy into what you're trying to do. So you can rebrand, but the rebranding has to have some real deliverables here in terms of how you are communicating what you're intending to do, looking at the time frames, letting people know what you're going to do, and letting people know what to expect. And also we have to have, as part of that communication, a very clear and consistent message across all of the cabinet ministers, ministers responsible for national recovery. What we can't have is one. See, if we can see that, and we can see that being managed, as Dr. HAMIDIN said, by the new Prime Minister, there is every chance that we will be very successful in moving forward through the various phases now into a full recovery from this pandemic.
If I can add to that, Peter, I agree totally. Communications during a crisis are so important. And I think one of the things also, I think Professor also mentioned earlier, was empathy. Now, when we look at the type of communications that's happened in the past, there was a massive focus on the word sire and I. If you go back and analyze some of the speeches, now we need to turn that narrative around and say, look, this is about you. This is about you, the people. And when you start to use different words during a crisis and understanding that they have impact on people, you will actually design a different response. So I think when it comes to the crisis response, people will only know what's going on by what the government communicates. The other thing I wanted to bring up was, it's not just the cabinet's job to solve this problem. They are the leaders of the different ministries, but the ministries also have a massive role to play. And they need, the personnel within those ministries need to take greater responsibility. The community themselves also need to take greater responsibility in this crisis response. We can't sit back and relax and expect it all to go away. It's everybody's job to solve this problem. And that's why I wanted to keep coming back to this teamwork idea. The entire country has to be on this team. Doesn't matter where you are in the political spectrum. If you're not solving this problem, you're adding to it. So I think this is the approach that we need to somehow get the Prime Minister and the new cabinet to get everyone on their team.
I mean, Nordin, you're absolutely right. And again, the football analogy is really good here. I mean, when you look at a football team that has been announced for a particular game, every single supporter will have a different view about what the formation is, who should be playing in what position, who the players are, people that are on the bench that should be playing.
Right.
What you have to do is let that team go forward and play.
Pete, and the rest. Now, the youth ministry, let's look at Undi 18. They're going to have to deal with an influx of young voters if Undi 18 is to be delivered as promised. What challenges will this create? We talk about reforms, we talk about new voices. This is the opportunity.
Yeah, Jessy. Yeah, thank you. I know that when Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim said one of the caveat that he wants to work with the government is reform an institution, and this is part of the Undi 18, also the bills on changing party along midway. I think the government, besides tackling the pandemic, I think need to work on institutional reform. I think this is very important to gain the trust of the people. And again, to talk about rebranding, Jessy, is going to be very difficult to rebrand something that are from the old outfit. But this is something can be done, I guess. And also, when Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri, the Prime Minister, said that within 100 days he wants to see progress, I think starting from this hour, by the end of the day, each minister that has been elected need to put out their KPIs, a very specific KPIs with timeline, what they want to achieve and how they want to achieve. And I say not only the pandemic that they have to put inside a KPI, but also regarding institutional reform. I think this is very important to gain the trust of the people, Jessy.
Absolutely.
Jessy,
Dr.
if I
Rais,
may
you've
add,
been a bit quiet. Yes, I
Jessy,
see. Okay,
yeah.
yes, please.
If I may add about what Dr. Azmi mentioned just now, and even mentioned by the Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim about institutional reform, we at Ilham Center, we do conduct a survey, especially on the institutional reform, until last June. And surprisingly, if you look at the current situation, that is the last thing that in people's mind. I think this is where the government really have to focus on what they want to do. In my point of view, yes, good for them to collaborate with opposition. I think to work bipartisan in many things, but in my point of view, the most important thing is about the welfare of the people at this particular time, especially how to bring us out of the pandemic COVID-19. So this is where, in my point of view, this is where direction is really important. Why? Because the way I see it, it's being kind of derailed by this debate on institutional reform that want to be done at this particular moment. I think it will defeat the purpose of the need of the people at this time. As Peter mentioned just now, we are at a crisis time now. We need really focus on that, and it, in my point of view, is very clear on that. So yes, we can work with the opposition, which is good, but I think he had to be really being selected selective in term of that, to make sure that it's very much focused on deliverability. I think people gain and deliverable. I think this is the most important part. Delivery system about governments, what government do. I think this is the most important. On the ground, that's what needed by the people.
Right. Dr. Rais?
So institutional reform won't put rice on people's tables. It's as simple as that. And what we've got to do right now is get rice on people's tables. And that's crisis, and that's the crisis management of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we have to focus on that. Every country in the world has to focus on that and is focusing on that right now.
Okay, if I may add, just an analogy, if somebody coming out of a desert after 5 days with no water and food, and you talk about institutional reforms, he may chop you up and eat you up. So that's how it is. But having said that, I just want to add, we are in this particular political conundrum because we did not have a proper institutional reform that was promised by the Pakatan Harapan at that point of time. Obviously, we know now that the manifesto, however beautifully crafted, was not delivered because there was no wherewithal on the part of then Prime Minister to deliver on the institutional reforms, and that's it. But this time around, I think there is a low-hanging fruit. Obviously, pandemic, economic recovery, and managing the political conundrum is key and critical in any crisis management. I mean, that is given. However, to set the thing going, perhaps the low-hanging fruits in the institutional reform surely must be anti-hopping law. This anti-hopping law is the antithesis of democracy. This must be instituted as soon as possible. Possibly also move a stage higher. Recall Act. Recall Act is when you see the member of parliament or the state assemblyman doesn't live to the expectation. The voters there in that constituency can ask for a recall election. Now, these are the things that we must do, because otherwise, yes, again, please do not take me wrong. EMIR Research has been so vocal on this pandemic management through our op-eds, our writings, critical of the previous two governments, and telling and sharing what can be the possible escape route, exit strategy for us. But be that as may, yes, Ilham was very correct that institutional reform is not the priority list. It will not put the RAIS on the table, but it will prohibit and prevent from RAIS to be put on table in the future. And that is something that we need to be very mindful. So to EMIR Research, again, we go back to the 4 areas, coming back to the protecting lives and livelihood. There cannot be any more this blanket MCO. There should be targeted MCO. There should be everything must be decided based on data, science, and economics. Do not, one day you open the factory, the next day you open the restaurant, and the following day you close the factory, the next day you... Inconsistent. I think that's a problem.
The Prime Minister has just announced that the cabinet this time, sorry Nordin, I'm just going to do this quickly. The cabinet this time, he says, will be results oriented. It'll be based on 3 principles, namely being sensitive to the needs of the people, of what we're talking about right now, rice bowls, of the cabinet being a responsible cabinet and trustworthy, as well as another principle or main aim is to restore the people's confidence. This is what the Prime Minister has just said. So it looks like they are checking those boxes as well, Nordin.
Well, it's one thing to say it, now you've got to do it. But one of the things I wanted to develop on the idea what Datuk was just saying, now we've got this crisis, we're dealing with rice on the table, and we're dealing with that. Now, as we play out and we look at what this next cabinet is going to do and leading up to the next election, demographically, the next election will change if Undi 18 is put in place. And at the same time, in 18 months' time, everyone will be vaccinated, the numbers will drop. So we're talking about another 7 odd million people able to vote. Now, that is a crisis in the making if the Ministry of Youth and Sport don't get the job done properly. Because I don't feel that there's going to be enough resources, and I'd like to see how much resources are going to be allocated to dealing with youth. Of course, I want to know what's going into sport as well, just because I want to make sure there's enough cricket fields. But the reality is we need to look at what is that big demographic shift that we're going to see in the next 18 months and its impact on a potential crisis in the future. And if you don't, and like what Datuk said earlier, if we don't deal with it now, it's going to be the crisis of the future. So we've got to deal with it now.
Let's look internationally. What will or may international investors say about this new cabinet? Are any of you picking up any sort of surprises or any comments?
Not really, Jessy. From our side, as the other gentlemen have said earlier, there are no real surprises with this particular new cabinet. So basically, we've always believed, and what our people are telling us is that its stability is the key. All investors are looking for stability, political stability, and there is a stability now box. Stability there, so that is positive, and the feedback we're getting is from early days where we've only had a couple of hours of this announcement, is that the international community are actually looking at this very positively and are saying, okay, it's a crisis, it's a war cabinet. Have they got the right people in there actually to be able to do this job? And the reaction seems to be yes, they have. But it's about the leadership, as many have said here already. It's about how the Prime Minister will now take that team and drive that team. And will he put in deliverables, and will he be able to achieve those deliverables? And that's what the community will now be looking at.
Dr. HAMIDIN, I'd like to perhaps...
Jessy, just to
perhaps
pick up.
you'd like to weigh in on that. Prof, yes. Anyone?
Yeah, just to pick up from what Peter NICOL said just now about foreign investors, I think maybe it's a good thing that the old faces are there. I think the more important thing is the stability of the government. I think that's what the investors want to hear about when they're making out their decision. And one thing that what the people expect from the new government is that they need to listen more, not only to the people needs, but also to the experts. I think the grave mistake that are being done by the previous administration is that all decisions, I think majority of them are based on political needs. I think more must be based on science and data, and this only can come from the expert. When a few months ago, the government put out the National Recovery Plan, there was a lot of blunder in the plan. If it was devised by an expert, it won't come out as it is. So I think the new government need to listen more on the experts, Jessy.
Thanks for
I think when it comes
to
Jessy, I think when it comes to stability, this is where I think the X factor in the new government. I think interestingly, if I pick up the point from Dr. AZMI just now, from the previous government, the instability is not created by the people. It's created by the political elite within the political party. That problem disappeared with the new government? I don't think so. It's still there. I think, and this is where, in my point of view, that the stability, as Peter mentioned just now, I'm a bit worried in that sense. To extent, does this cabinet really satisfy the hungry ghost in those political party? I think this is the most important part. And when we look at the current appointment, if we look from the political sense, UMNO doesn't really gain from their move in moving out Muhyiddin Yassin. This is where me and my team we were scratching our head when we are looking at the current political situation in Malaysia. Maybe Dr. RAIS with the EMIR research can assist us and give more kind of research data on this. For us, when we do our survey until last June, July, seemed that Muhyiddin Yassin popularity as a prime minister is still there, but the popularity of the cabinet is not there. So meaning, in that sense, people are really judging the cabinet, not only judging the prime minister. So now what happened is, because of the political situations, we remove the prime minister, but we maintain most of the cabinet member. So we are very much looking forward to do our survey, looking at how things from people perceptions after this. It's quite interesting from that point of view.
Right.
If I may just add quickly, you can put someone there for 96 years and you still get stability. Do you?
Yep.
So the problem is not stability in position, stability of the same face, stability of a same individual. Stability here must be stability in policies, consistency in policies that is welcoming FDIs. God knows that Malaysia needs every dime that they can get in foreign direct investments. Are we doing enough? 3 cable landings that worth billions of ringgit was lost in the last 24 months. Why? Because we removed that exemption to cabotage policy for the fiber repair. Now, this is a very critical thing. We have issued, we have engaged, we discussed to try to get it back. But 3 cable landings have missed the shores of Malaysia, went to Singapore, Indonesia, and Thailand. So these are the things that we need to be very mindful. I do not think stability only reflected by individual there being there for 96 years. I use 96 on purpose. But the most important thing is the stability in policies, consistency in policy, listening to the stakeholders, listening to the industry players. I think that is where we need to rebuild cohesively a plan. Just now, one of them were talking about the recovery plan is quite deficient. I agree. That's why in EMIR research, we talks about economics of empathy. Throw away your Adam Smith, Keynesian, monetary economists, rating agencies, and the usual economists, because we are facing an unusual situation, unprecedented times. Increase your debt to GDP ratio in the parliament, so that introduce proper safety net, wage subsidy, renters protection, opt-out moratorium. Let's have empathy for the people, not empathy for the bankers. So what I'm trying to say this repeatedly over the 1 or 2 years, that we could have come out this pandemic faster, sooner. Only I hope KJ was the health minister then. This guy, he couldn't care less about who you are, whether you are opposition, whether you are Bersatu, whether you are PAS or DAP. He listens to all. He gets things done. So we need people like him to run it. And that's why I'm very thankful and hopeful today to see his name as the health minister. But by and large, let's not quickly say that it's a stability and so on. As I say, 96 years you can be there. That is also stability. But what does that mean to the country and the people?
Exactly, and I think one of the things, Dato', if I can add to that, when we talk about policy continuation, yes, the trade associations, the business councils have the relationship now with the current minister sitting in the MITI portfolio, but there's been other policy changes during the last government which have really impacted investors, and one of those was the Malaysia My Second Home program. And that has actually started to send a bit of a shockwave into the expatriate community who have invested a lot of money here in the property sector and in the business sector. And that has actually created a bit of a ripple effect. And I think this is one policy that the current government needs to look at, because while it may not be the people who invested in the factories, they work for the companies who are investing in the factories. So it creates, whenever you see any kind of mismatch in policy, it does create an impact. And I think we need to look at, before policy change takes place, we need to run the data a little bit more. So if we're going to do that, it's going to impact the property market. If we do that, are we going to get the investment numbers that we need? Now, Dato', I wanted to ask you specifically a question. I know we don't have a lot of time. Now we are seeing UMNO is helming the current government, and the previous and as we went into the previous election, this was also the case. And we've got similar people in the opposition. Are we going? What does that mean for leading into the next election?
A very, very interesting question. Let me tell you, there's a lot. The political landscape will change a lot. I think previously Ilham was talking about UMNO didn't get much. On the contrary, I think UMNO got a lot. They are very smart player. They are smart cookie. They've been in this business. For them, it's business for very, very long time. So they know what to do, which button to press, and so on. I think the political landscape is going to change a lot. Once only 18 comes in, there's going to be a rise in third force. Many of EMIR research polls, like what Ilham does, we see the rise in the third force. That means neither here or Pakatan Harapan nor in the Barisan Nasional / Perikatan Nasional and whatever alphabet that comes after that. So they starting to move away to the third force. So are we going to see continue to see a hung parliament? Yes, most likely we are going to see a hung parliament. We are going to see quite a divided in a way that there's going to be a third force, kingmakers and so on. That is why food is important, rice is important, kway teow is important, mee goreng is important on the table. But I appeal, I beg to everyone, to the people, to pressure, to invite, to persuade aggressively with the government to introduce this anti-hopping law. This anti-hopping law is a single point of failure for democracy. What you vote is not what you get. That is a big problem in democracy. Democracy is a hard work. I mean, no one says democracy is going to be easy. It's going to be a hard work. But if you
I think we've covered
address
some
this
key
law-
points here, but we don't have much time left on the clock, and I just wanted to go round table with this. The Prime Minister earlier this week, he called on all members to work together to ensure that the nation at least attempts to recover from this health and economic crisis that we're going through that's brought on by the pandemic. He said that this can be achieved if MPs from both sides of the divide adopt an open and hard mind. So he's calling for teamwork. I come back to that question. But now that we are just a couple of days from Merdeka, so on the back of Merdeka and now this new government, gentlemen, what are we seeing enough unity? And furthering that, are we seeing enough diversity in this election?
I think Ismail Sabri's invitation of the opposition to meet up with him recently is a very good signal that he wants a teamwork, whether it's for political reason or whether to safeguard the present government or not. That's a different issue. But the fact that he came, he advised, he took advice and signed a joint communique and then put it publicly, I think that is a good start. Merdeka is a very important occasion for all of us. We need to liberate ourselves from the old politics. Is the new politics possible? I think I'm very hopeful that it is possible, but there should be genuinity from all perspectives. I think there was magnanimity on the part of Ismail Sabri. There was a magnanimity on the part of the opposition leaders to come together and issue the communique. Let's hope that is the start. Again, there are three things that we need to focus on: pandemic, economics, and managing the political conundrum. If we do not do these three things, especially the first one, the pandemic, we are going to be in deep waters.
Jessy, if I may, Jessy, if I may, my parting word is, I think what happened in politically, historically also, when there is a joint communique between leaders of the opposition and Ismail Sabri, it is really much, as Dr. RAIS mentioned, a new kind of stage of Malaysian politics, which is moving towards the direct positive direction, which I hope that will create a lot more kind of clear understanding and cooperation approach in Malaysian politics. However, if our topic today is about cabinet, this is where you have that kind of general framework of working and collaborate between opposition and government. But the appointment, in my point of view, of cabinet as it is today is very much a setback to that framework. Because, as I said just now, I don't see any much new people who can bring in new approach as bring in by Ismail Sabri to work with the opposition. So that's
Prof, do you share the same thoughts as Dr. Hamidin?
Yeah, Jessy, a little bit only. But again, I have high hopes for the government. Let's hope that, just to reiterate what Dr. Hamidin said and Dr. said just now about tackling the pandemic, I'm really hoping that the opposition will accept Ismail Sabri's invitation to join the Council for National Recovery and also for the Committee of the Pandemic. I think if the opposition are joining these two particular entities, I think we can tackle the pandemic. Let's forget about the cabinet. Let's have some positive view on the cabinet. I think on the pandemic itself, I think these particular two entities are very critical for the opposition to join. Jessy.
That's right. Thanks, Prof, for weighing in. Pete, NORDIN, please feel free.
Last one from me, really, because I know time's short, is that I think it's too early to say and months how opposition and current government will work. Will they gel together in this kind of family approach to dealing with the incidents? And that will be the proof of success or otherwise. Also, very quickly, just Merdeka Day is coming up for Malaysia. Just to remind everybody that the world is watching. I mean, my home country, Scotland, we're currently going through this drive towards independence, and we're looking to you. We're looking to Malaysia as an independent country, how you do things, how you respond. So it's not just about investors. The global world is watching Malaysia as well. And it's very important that Malaysia shows how they can lead, how they can change as an independent nation and drive their business forward. You become an example to all of us who wish to be in your position, you know?
That's right. Thank you so much, Ahmed, for all weighing in. Not much time left on the clock. I just want to reiterate that all the views of our speakers today are solely their own and does not reflect in any form the views of Bernama. NORDIN, perhaps we can hear from you a little bit before we close this panel discussion here.
Sure. Thank you very much, Jessy, and thank you everyone else for sharing this session with us. I think congratulations to the cabinet, congratulations to the PM for getting his team together. You're all on the team, and going with this EPL analogy, we only know the players are good because we look at their statistics. So we've got our team out there. Now you as the players in the cabinet need to deliver the statistics and get things done, and everyone has got to get behind this team. If you don't get behind this team, like Peter said earlier, we're not going to be able to stand tall in the face of the world. But if we do get it right, we will be the prime example for all nations in terms of how to get out of the mess that is the pandemic that we're in right now.
That's right. Still a lot of work to do. A few important elements we need to look at, to address, and of course also a few reforms. But this has been The Nation, a special edition on the new cabinet. Thank you for joining me. Thank you, gentlemen. And here's wishing everyone a very happy Merdeka. See you soon. Bye-bye.